morning to all of you.
Yes. Uh, Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to continue the poem entitled as A Psalm of Life, composed by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, H.W. Longfellow. So I think we have almost finished the introductory part of the poem, and today we are going to proceed further. So, A Psalm of Life, the poem has an optimistic outlook, and the poem has its own title, that is what the heart of the young man said to the psalmist. This is a very important poem as per as its biblical preachings or teachings about human life is concerned, into consideration, that how human life is essential and how the warnings in terms of the unpredictable death in the span of human life can take your life away anytime. Actually, one more thing we have elaborately discussed in my last lecture, that we are made up of dust and finally we will return to dust. It's a philosophy. We talked about this issue also in depth in my last lecture. Then we talked about full of possibilities and higher goals in life and the fulfillment of the goals through working hard. Then we talked about faith, power, the optimistic attitude, and instructions by the Longfellow to the readers. So the poem has 9 stanzas of 4 lines. The poem is lyrical in nature. Rhyming scheme is ABAB. So we discussed all these things in the last lecture. So let's interpret the lines and elaborately discussed many issues regarding to this. So 15 students are there. So A Psalm of Life is written by H.W. Longfellow. The lines are, tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Look at the beauty of lines. So here we actually come across the different perspectives of life interpreted by scholars. But to be specific, the focus is made on the interpretation of life by the poet See the lines. I quote, "Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. Life is an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers. Our soul is in a sound sleep. That is called slumbering. It is in slumber. That's why the poet considers that the soul is dead. And this causes a disastrous consequence. That is the thing that almost the things all around you are not what they seem. Sometimes we perceive many things in life, but this perception is deception, and the deception is perception. The world has full of illusions, and the reality is hardly fathomed. So, the poem begins with the verb tell in an imperative manner. When can I ask you the question tell? If I am very eager to know something about something, then I can say tell me. The poem begins with the verb tell. Tell, the word is used in its imperative sense. This is used in an imperative manner. Tell, please tell me something about that. The poet is very curious to know your responses to the questions that has been lingering in his mind for a long time. These questions absolutely baffle the poet. These questions create a great mess into his mind. So he is very much interested in understanding exactly what you think about certain problems, what you think about life. So that's why he's asking you the question, tell. This is the meaning of tell, T-E-L-L, which is used in an imperative manner. And the very first sentence strikes the positive keynote of the poem. The first sentence itself is a positive keynote. 16 students are there. Please take the what we call a screenshot also. Okay, the maximum students, 16 number. Okay. So the very first sentence strikes the positive keynote of the poem. It also indicates that the poet is going to give us some instructions on what this life actually is and how we should take it. What is the life and how we have to take life? The poem asks us not to tell him in sorrowful verses that life is a hollow and meaningful dream. So the first line itself is very meaningful, wherein the poet says, "Tell me not in mournful numbers." It means that you should define what life means, but your definitions should be positive rather than negative. Your definition should be optimistic rather than pessimistic. You should not only count the mournful numbers, but you have to interpret life in its positive sense. You cannot simply say that life is just an empty dream, but you have to find out what is there in the dream. What else is embedded or ingrained into the dream? How the dream is treated positively, or it can be dealt with constructively. So these are basic interpretations of the poem. So here the first sentence strikes the positive keynote of the poem. So here what I think about this poem is that the poet is going to give us some instructions on what this life is actually. So we receive some instructions and how we should take it and how we take the instructions by the poet. The poet also asks us not to tell him in a sorrowful verses. So here you should not interpret life in its negative sense or in sorrowful verses, that life is a hollow, life is meaningless dream. So the definition is like that. And you also know that life is a bubble, life is a hollow dream, life is a meaningful dream. So these are our definitions. So here Longfellow slams the pessimists who sing melancholy songs. So here the poet Longfellow does not like to interpret life negatively, pessimistically, rather than optimistically. So write sad poems or thinks that nothing can be achieved in this life. So he is of the opinion that if you think negatively, you deteriorate yourself, you devalue yourself, and you will not progress in your life. So in order to progress in your life, what you have to do is to define life positively. This is what exactly the poet says. So he also says that you should not meditate over the sad songs of life. So sing the happy songs of life. According to the poet, a person who spends all his time sleeping is already dead. So you can see that there are many people that they say that life is nothing, just simply they go to bed and sleep for the whole day. Okay. So for them, the life is dead. For them, their soul is dead. So the poet says that you should not spend all of your time in sleep. Then you will be in slumber, a sound sleep. So this should not happen with you. This is what the poet says. Such worthless examples of life often misguide others. So you should guide others. You should be an epitome of guidance. You should be the best example of guidance to others. So that's why it is said in English, Yani yana baddhani tani karmani sevitani no itrani. Sanskrit. Yani yana baddhani tani karmani sevitani no itrani. What does it mean? It means that we should respect the elder people, parents, teachers. And suppose there are some mistakes in the behavior of elders, teachers, and the people, then what exactly you are supposed to do is that you should simply ignore the worst qualities in them and accept the best. So ignore the worst and accept the best. If something you find in elders. So here what I feel is that we are talking something about your conscious nature for well-being in life. So the poet is talking about one crucial aspect, that is how life is important and how it must not be misinterpreted. So he assures that life is not so shady or worthless as it looks like. Life is not shady. Life is not worthless. Life is not meaningless. Life is not an empty dream. Life is not a meaningful dream. Life should not be treated in its negative sense. So all these things what the poet has said us. But talking something about this, he says that the life has much more potential than we think of. So he is of the opinion that life has everything, just you have to interpret life in its correct sense. So this is what happens with the first stanza. So this is the meaning of your first stanza. I repeat the lines once again. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. The second stanza. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. How beautiful lines are here. If you read the lines also, there is no need of any interpretation. You can simply understand the lines, the original lines. Look at the original lines. I repeat. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its soul. So the life you lead is real. The life you enjoy is a realistic one. It's a physical presence. It is earnest. And what is your aim? If I ask you a question like this, what is your aim, my dear students? You say, sir, I want to become a doctor, an engineer, then a collector, or a policeman, or something, whatever you think. So you tell us about your aims. If I ask you the question, what is the goal of your life? The goal of your life is that you want to become something or you want to do something, a great thing, a thing in its larger sense. That is your goal. It is also specific. But here, Longfellow is of the opinion that death is not the goal of your life. Life is the goal of your life. So one day we are supposed to die. That is the final destiny to all the human beings on the earth. One day they are going to die. This is compulsory. So look at one more thing, that God has given us one more magic. That is the forgetfulness about the notion of death. Every time we forget that there is death in life, that's the only reason we are happy. We are happy because every time we forget about death. And if you say death like this continuously, then as soon as you utter the word death, you forget about this. And only because of this, we have almost forgotten that there is death in our life. And if we forget about death, so we cannot understand the importance of life. So here, so we need to understand the importance of life and its worth, because the goal is not the grave. The grave is not its goal. Death is not its goal. So do something well, be well. Dust thou art, to dust returns. Everything is a dust. Everything is going to be perished, finished. The transitoriness of life has been focused. And remember one thing, that you are going to be the dust. So that's why do something good. Was not spoken of the soul. The second stanza begins with the line, life is real, life is earnest. This conveys the poet's positive attitude towards life. According to poet, life is real, life is serious, not baseless. Life is not baseless. Life is not empty. Life is not useless. Life is not negative. Life is positive. Life has a base. Life is useful. Life is real. Life is serious. Life is not absurd. Therefore, we should not take this life lightly. So you should not understand the meaning of life lightly. You do not take it lightly. So here the poet says that grave is not the ultimate goal of life. Grave is not the ultimate goal of life. Death is not the ultimate goal of life. Life does not end with death. The end of life is not death, according to the poet. So I told the same lines in my last lecture also. In my beginning is my end, in my end is my beginning. These are the lines of T.S. Eliot, a modern poet. In my beginning is my end, in my end is my beginning. So here the poet says that life does not end with death. He wants to indicate that our life remains in this world even after our death. After death also the life remains, he says. He thinks, dust thou art, to dust thou returnest. You are made up of dust and you will go back to dust after death. He's only spoken of the body. The poet is talking about the body. The body has death, but spirit has not death. There is the death to your body. There is no death to your soul or Atma, or someone who is sitting beside you, sitting within you. That's why in Yajurveda, it is said that in holy person's body, at the center of holy person's body, there is some
এটা শুরু
there is some invisible power, and in the invisible power is at the center of holy man's body, and there is the invisible lotus, and in the invisible lotus someone dwells. That is truth, that is Atma, that is Shiva. All these things has been interpreted in the Yajurveda. So there is the death to your body, but there is no death to your soul. It is not applicable to the soul. So the poet makes it clear that he believes in the existence of the soul after our death. This is very important. So the poet believes in the existence of the soul. So my dear students, I think there is only 1 minute left. So after 1 minute, the video will be finished. So you are supposed to join the same video to continue our lecture. Is this okay?
ওকে
Okay. The poet makes it clear that he believes in the existence of the soul after our death. So these two stanzas over, we will see from third stanza, third, fourth, fifth stanza is also there. Sixth, seventh,